How are you doing? And welcome to the trend. It's Friday night. Of course, this has been one show that a lot of people have anticipated for. A lot of people have been waiting for this. So we do apologize for starting late today. Like, niliwaambia kesho ni live manze kuna vitu kadha wa kadha lazima zifanyike. The hashtag is Hey Amina, and at the Trend Live is where you get to send in your opinion. We have Halisi Band on the show tonight. We have one of my good friends, Nana from KICC. She's going to be talking to us about, her plans for KICC. Just being a CEO, as a woman, of course, all of the challenges that she's facing and all of the accomplishments that she has made thus far. We get to talk about that. And today we've got General who's going to be reading our social media feedback. We've got your meme challenge and all of that coming up right after this conversation on whether or not we should legalize. Now, hashtags such as legalize it, MJ420, international herb. Now, there are very, very many. I've been seeing them from here in the 254. Now, they've jolted this conversation into regional and international prominence. Now, while proponents are saying that there are a wide range of benefits of the use of marijuana and should be legalized, opponents are saying, no. By no means should we go that route. Pop culture has not been left behind in the push to legalize it, with hit songs such as Afro Man's Because I Got High, Because I Got High, Bob Marley's, Kai, and so many other songs, all written under the pretext of glorifying marijuana use. Now, marijuana has also gotten onto the slang radar, blunt, ombizo, kushpeng, miwa, Mary Jane, ganja, you guy, my guy, what is it called? Now, they're all used in the streets, and a few weeks ago, Kenya bid farewell to a key proponent of legalizing marijuana, the late Kibra MP Ken Okoth, who argued that legalization would be immensely helpful for its medicinal value, and marijuana's economic impact to a country is not lost to us either. Countries have different thresholds of weed tolerance. For some, it's outright illegal. Others, the illegality is based on quantities. Others, it's illegal, but it's tolerated. In other countries, it is criminalized for medical use, but decriminalized when it comes to recreational use. Now, is it high time that we joined countries such as Australia, Canada, Jamaica, Uruguay, Argentina, and so many more that have legalized marijuana or not? That is what we're talking about tonight. The hashtag is Hey Amina. I have my panelists with me. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for staying with us this evening. We were talking a lot off air, but I want to start with everyone just introducing themselves. Let me start with you, John.
My name is John Ochola.
Your mic, John.
My name is John Ochola. I'm an advocate with the High Court of Kenya and also an advocate for medicinal cannabis.
Hi, Amina. Everyone who's at home.
KJ, your mic has an issue, unfortunately. Kindly, if you could take that, yes.
Hi, Amina.
Hi.
And everyone who's watching us at home, and everyone from the Greater South constituency. I'm KJ, and I represent the people of the Greater South in the parliament. Yes.
But right now, you're here representing my youth.
And I'm here representing the people. Yes.
The people of Kenya. Welcome, KJ.
Thank you.
She has her own mic.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Dr. Siango Mutisia. I'm a psychiatrist. My interest is promoting good mental health for Kenyans so that they can all reach their potential like we are doing.
Good evening, David Ogod, recovering addict, user of marijuana, hashish, former user, I should say hashish, and now doing drug abuse activism.
Yes, all right.
My name is Jeff Rokatai. I'm a hip hop artist, I'm a youth minister, and I'm passionate about the youth.
Yes. So now, as we start about this, now you've experienced, you've interacted with a lot of young people as well who use marijuana, having, used it yourself. And I want to throw this question to everybody. Fundamentally, what is wrong with marijuana? Let me start with John, because John's done a lot of research. So much so that we've got this book right here with his name on it, The Cannabis Story. He talks about the health, the wealth, and the law on marijuana.
Just to start off, what I can say is that there's been a lot of misconception about cannabis or marijuana, as we can see, in the sense that the use of cannabis in terms of what is projected to the media is not what is actually, it's not the real situation as it is in terms of the beneficial or the benefits of marijuana. In terms of from a prohibition perspective, what you're living in at the moment is that we're living on a perspective of myths and misconceptions in regard to the effects of cannabis or marijuana as you speak of. Yes, there could be some negative effects on the use of marijuana, but the positive aspects of the use of marijuana, or the applications of marijuana or cannabis, I'm using these terms interchangeably because I know people could use marijuana for a certain and cannabis for a certain aspect. But what I can say is that for a long time in this country and in many jurisdictions, there's been a lot of misconceptions in regards to the applications of cannabis in the society. Yeah. And that's the situation that we are in right now. More and more we find that more young people are willing to discuss you'd find that they're using it, and they're ready to discuss in terms of the effects of cannabis. For the older generation, I'd find that we grew up in an age whereby once you're told that cannabis or marijuana is bad, that was the end of it all. There was no research, but rather that there was a perpetuation of myths and misconceptions. At the moment, I'd rather leave to the other panelists probably to expound on their views. Before I go into the legal...
Thank you for taking over my show, John. Thank you. We're hosting the show together now. But he is right. A lot of young people are, consuming marijuana. They are, and it's very common, which is very different from when I was growing up.
And to your question, Amina, I think we'd run into a big risk if we were to just come here and say that we are talking about weed. And that's what, is making it popular. That's what is going into the pop culture, that we're here to talk about weed. But when you think about it, there is actually nothing called weed. In fact, when you talk about the plant itself and think about it generally, you'd probably start out with 3 strains of cannabis, which are totally different. Cannabis sativa and cannabis indicus is not the same thing. But even beyond that, there are people who will interchangeably, as he's saying, use marijuana and hemp, thinking that it's the same thing. So we can't just have a general conversation about the pros and the cons of weed
without knowing what exactly are taking in the first place.
Yes, what exactly we are talking about. And that's why it would be very risky for us to have a popular discussion.
Yeah.
Because when you have a popular discussion, wase watakuwa nasema, mna legalize weed ama legalize.
Which
when
is
you go
actually
deeper,
what people think the conversation constantly is about.
Yes, exactly.
So sism adjacent to
exactly. Hawa nataka wapate mablunt zichomwe. But now even when it comes to the use, and I'll be so general about it, and you can't get as general as the two differentiations, which is for medicinal use and for recreational use.
Yes.
Now, even what you will use for medicinal use and what you will use for recreational use, actually totally different components of this plant that we are talking about. Because the component itself carries things they call cannabinoids. These cannabinoids are probably 400, 500 of them in that plant.
Yes.
Now you have to separate the ones that give a high, which is the TCH, and the ones which are now the CBDs, which probably have some medicinal element in them, but don't give a high. So to imagine that we will have a conversation about wase mna legalize weed ama legalize would be very naive of us. So I think the reason why I'm here and why you call me is because of my governor. His Excellency Governor Mike Sonko Mbuvi Kivyangule, because he made a declaration in Kibra, and he said, unajua Mheshimiwa Ken Okoth alikuwa na bill alikuwa ameleta bunge na nyinyi wale viongozi vijana, and he named guys. He said Babu Owino, KJ na Jagwa, mwende mpitishe hii bill. I'd like to say first, the bill has not even hit the floor of the House. It's not there yet. And when it gets there, it will also be discussed on its merits and demerits as a bill. But what I know Honorable Ken Okoth had intimated was that there will be a bill called the Marijuana Control Bill.
Yes.
And it will seek to control marijuana, and it will go all the way to the extent of registering the people who will be farming this marijuana, the ones who will be producing it, manufacturing it, peddling it or selling it, and even users. So ikishafika hapo sasa vijana waanze kujiuliza kama hii story sasa tutakuwa tuna ndio uchome weed, lazima ukuwe na idea kuchoma weed ama itakuwa story gani?
Itakuwa ni kama-
So
pombe itakuwa ni-
yes, the long and short of it is that it cannot be a general discussion. I mean, it's not one wide discussion, and I'm hoping we are here to unpack it. Yes.
Which is very true, and you're absolutely right. When it does become a very popular conversation, then people think we're talking about selling plants, buying plants, and people having a good time, or whatever it is. But that's definitely not what it's about. And with David here as well. Now, David, I want you to share your story of addiction and how you even got started, if you could.
Okay, just what Wanaochola was saying about the older generation.
Yeah.
Because the first time I came into contact with weed was 73. So I think I qualify to be the older generation. And that I was in first form. And just as I go on what KJ is saying about what are we actually talking about, because to my thinking, the way cigarettes were in my time is the way weed is now. In other words, it's common. Weed, no big deal. People are onto other things, the heroines and so on. But it was essentially, my drug use started with alcohol and tobacco.
Yeah.
Because I was told, if you want, I couldn't talk to girls, in short. So I was told girls like bad boys. So you smoke cigarettes and you drink alcohol. And I actually said, no, my dad told me if you smoke cigarettes, you'll get cancer and die. I don't want to die. And alcohol is for others. So long story short, at some point I did start smoking and drinking alcohol just before going to second form. And then by the time we're finishing second form, transitioning to third form, the same gang is saying, you're still on cigarettes. Cigarettes are for first formers, babies. There's a bigger cigarette called weed. Now, here's the thing with weed. And that's why it's called drug of choice. I was sharing with Daktari. Because you'll find a weed guy is telling you alcohol is bad. And the alcohol guys are telling the heroin guys heroin is bad. And the heroin guy is telling the weed and the alcohol guys that what you're doing is wrong, heroin is the whatever. Now, when I first took weed, it's like being in an airplane where you are the pilot and you're seeing a mountain coming and you want to go around the mountain, but the plane is going through the mountain. And you're coming to land and it's not landing. So it's like literally I'm out of my body, I'm seeing my body, and I'm telling my body, get up and walk. But my body's not following instructions. So I literally said, if I can land this plane, I'm not doing weed again. And I actually did not touch weed from third form to sixth form. And then again, and after sixth form. And then again, I would only do it for emergencies. There's no alcohol nearby, there's no whatever nearby.
And this was for how many years after high school?
Okay, like after high school, this is 79, my A-levels, and then I was sent to India by my parents. They were misled that I would not access alcohol as a student, and there I accessed alcohol, and there was weed sold in kiosks just the way you'd buy cigarettes, and that's why I accessed hashish, which again is a derivative of cannabis. Now, hashish went very well with me. I could really play chess and see like 10, 15 moves ahead. Not that I'm advocating for that. So again, you see it, and this is why it's called the drug of choice, because alcohol was working for me, it's not working for somebody else.
Yes,
okay?
And so another drug is working for you.
Yes.
Which is so the one thing that's very clear and coming out of what you're saying is that peer pressure
Yes.
was a really huge contributing factor to you becoming an addict. And the huge misconception is that it's not addictive and weed is not a drug. What do you say to that?
Actually, research has shown clearly that when you use weed, when your mind is still developing, below 18, chances of you getting addicted are quite high. Again, there's research demonstrating that people develop, some particular people are predisposed to getting psychosis as a result of using cannabis when they are not genetically predisposed to having schizophrenia, for example. So again, I will repeat the same. There are basically different components of cannabis. There is the THC, which will give you the high, and then the cannabinoid, which might be medicinal, which is medicinal, And so we are seeing that over time, the cannabis in the market, which they are calling high potency, actually the THC is increasing with time. And so as we talk of legalizing, we must bear in mind that as you try to get the medicinal aspect, you'll also get the other aspect of it.
Yes.
All the same, we know that to get any product for medicinal use, there is a way of getting any drug which is useful to the Kenya Essential Medicines list. So if there is benefit and it's scientifically proven that it qualifies to be in the Kenya Essential Medicines list, then it will be as a drug. But as of now, I will agree with everybody else that generalizing and saying, let's legalize, we're still very far. We still need to do more research.
We really are. And I think also just when people need to understand, when we say legalize, what
are we legalizing?
is this?
Yes. What
That
are we?
is-
Is it the CBD or the THC?
Yes. So do paint that picture for us, KJ. Oh, okay. Yes, KJ, yes. As a policymaker.
Now, the thing is, first of all, when we talk about making laws, of course, laws are made for humans, not humans made for the laws. So you want to make a law that works for the people. Now, which people are you who do you want this law to work for? So you have to start with an intent. For example, if you're making a law that allows for us to get the good value out of this plant called cannabis, then you start out with the medicinal value. Now, for medicinal value, it means that it would not even be a hype discussion, because then what do you need to do to get to the place where you're getting extracts or the derivatives of the cannabis that would have to be backed by a lot of good, solid research. Now, think about a country like ours, where we know we are producing so many graduates, very few research papers. In places like the US, we know there's a lot of research done. And out of all the research they have ever done, would you believe that the government in the US has only passed 2 drugs for use out of the cannabis plant? Now, there are many states. There could be around 10, including the Washington state, the Washington capital, that have legalized it for recreational use, and maybe a bit more, maybe around 20 or 30.
Actually 21.
21.
Medicinal or even recreational.
Yes, so now around 21 who have given it for medicinal and recreational, with all the research that they have done over the years. Now think of a country as small as Kenya. When we start a legalized weed debate, and we start pushing lawmakers to go and legalize, and as we said, make it part of our pop culture, what the person in Dagoretti is thinking is 2 things. There's someone thinking that we legalizini haraka tuvute weed. Yes. Then there is a lady in Reruta, or maybe Ozero, or maybe Motoine, or maybe Waithaka, or a place in Dagoretti.
Yeah.
There's a lady who's thinking, wait a minute, you guys already have legal stuff that you're not able to control as government.
Very true.
For example, we have alcohol legalized. It's legal to have alcohol taken by people of a certain age. But in Dagoretti, we have a drinking problem. Alcohol is an issue that we are having to deal with every waking day, doing raids, going into dens, and so on and so forth. So we have a control issue. When we have the legalized conversation, how are we able to control what we legalize as a country?
Very true. Look at even, the issues that, we keep seeing coming up time and time again in places like Mombasa, where you have a drug problem, where drugs are already illegal.
Exactly. And control means the whole chain,
Yes.
starting from the laws, all the way to the policing, all the way to the judicial system, all the way to even the what you call we stop calling them jails. What do we call it? We stopped calling the jails. Place where people go to be rehabilitated, and so on. So that whole chain, have we checked it out as Kenya, and have we seen that we are ready to now start having a conversation on whether to legalize, and if we are legalizing for medicinal or for recreational? recreational use.
Yes, that's true. Now, the economic value is something that we have to talk about, which I think is one of the issues why so many people do keep pushing for the legalization. And of course, medicinal. We're going to get back. We're going to talk more about it. We want to hear what you have got to say. Hashtag Hey Amina at The Trend Live. And welcome back. We're talking about the legal status of cannabis. How did we get here? Well, this has been in question in the U.S. since back in the day when people were when they started regularly smoking marijuana. That was back in the 1900s. But how did it become illegal? Well, as it turns out, it has roots in racist rhetoric pushed by politicians and the media. The 1930s, when it first became illegal, back in 1937, actually, that's when the Marijuana Tax Act was passed in the USA. And then, now cannabis was being taxed. And there were a lot of people who had so many fears, and that fear was being pushed by, what was his name? His instigate was Harry Anslinger?
Yeah,
right?
the first drug.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now when you start reading about it, you get so surprised as to how we even got here. But now, Jeffro, for you, unaongea nao going and for them, wanaona nikai ni biz, awaoni nikai kuna effect yoyote, awaelewi mazeni nini, wase wana wakazia, but it affects them. Unemployment wamesema pia ni kitu yenye it plays a role. What are you, when you talk to them, what are some of the other things that come out?
Like young people, employment in Kenya is rampant. I mean, many young people are unemployed. And unaweza kapata, like, when someone actually smokes weed, I'll just give an example. Personally, me, I've smoked weed. And it was also influence of music, akina Dr. Dre, akina Tupac, na kadhalika. And you can find, but it was really hidden. But right now, ukiangalia YouTube, utaona zinanishika yo. And young people, that's part of the culture. And as someone will watch that video online and will think like, like there's nothing really wrong with weed. But when you really research, you'll find like even back in the day, the THC level, which is actually what makes somebody high, etc., was like 1%. Now it's like 11%, pretty much, which really it damages your brain, etc. And me, I just tell young people, like, your body is the temple of God, and like if you really want to accomplish purpose, you really have to think in the future. And some of these things really, like, they might be really pushed in the culture, but they actually damage you and they make you retrogress towards reaching where God has orchestrated for you to reach. You know what I'm saying? And do your research, you'll find, like, for example, in countries like Europe, Portugal, or even Netherlands, whereby there were coffee shops, guys could go over there, like, have their weed, etc. But most of them are closed, because you'll find like the teenagers or the young people, it went even like 300% increase, like, pretty much in addictions, etc. So I think, like, let's research, let's not just embrace everything, let's research and then see what's up.
Which is very true, which is what Johnny was trying to tell us before.
Sure.
Those are the cons. If we could just run through them.
Sure. Before you do research, you must have a regulatory environment for it. You cannot just prohibit something and yet you want to research on it. You must open the spaces for research. And that's what we are, and that's what we're advocating, that first of all, do scientific and medicinal use. Of course, there are already results in terms of this scientific reports that have been done in regard to marijuana. But just to throw the question back to him, at what age did you start smoking marijuana?
At what age did I start smoking marijuana?
At what age?
In high school.
In high
just
school.
Sampling a little bit, stopped, and then I picked it up later on. Sorry?
How old?
I was below 18. I was like 17, 15.
Perfect. As the right person, 13.
13.
I'd agree with the good doctor, Dr. Catherine, that consumption of marijuana or smoking marijuana at an adolescent age produces a high risk of psychosis and schizophrenia. That's one thing that,
in some people.
Oh, it's not in everybody.
Yes.
Not in everybody, but you're most likely, you're highly predisposed to that. So that's actually the problem, and that's what you're not addressing. You're not telling our people.
This is why you shouldn't.
Why? Well, this is why you should not smoke, because your brain has not been fully developed.
It affects your IQ level if you're below 18. Yeah, that's true.
All drugs.
That's some of the discussion that we want now to bring out into the open. Then beyond that, we need to look at what are the benefits of using cannabis as it is.
But this is, you're talking about recreational, or this is now medicinal?
No, for recreational, the cannabis industry is a very, very huge industry. There's recreational, medicinal, there's industrial. In terms of advising the youth, in terms of even having a discussion about whether it should be legalized or not, what benefits can we get from it? We could would start by probably educating young people in terms of why is it really bad for you to smoke.
Which is
at
what
an-
we're
yeah,
hoping.
yeah, at an early age.
Yeah.
So let's leave all this discussion that is going around social media that we all want to smoke. Young people from a very young age, but what can you use from this plan that is going to be beneficial for the entire country and for everybody else? For the young people,
And I think it would be very
Yeah.
wrong to let the young people have to choose
Have to choose exactly.
what to use for their treatment.
exactly.
If you tell them, sample and see whether it will be able to cure this disease, I think if we go that way, we'll lose many young people.
Yes.
It is for us to research and see if it works and in what conditions. Remember, all drugs have side effects, but we use them. We look at the benefit versus the side effects.
Yes.
So I think we need to pass the message to the young people that they need to be careful, not for them to experiment, and be knowing that you can't tell who will develop a problem as a result of using cannabis. And when one person develops,
I think what you bring up is critical. Where do we start?
Yeah.
I think first of all, even the trend is really bold to bring up this conversation. We will not be able to control the conversation. You will not stop people from trending it on social media. You will
Or
not stop.
changing the narrative
Yes,
of what you're trying to
you
do.
will not stop my boy Zero from singing about it. But now to have the conversation now gets us now starting to venture into the dark spaces that are making it exciting, but also that are also making it a bit more sensational. Now, when we open up the conversation and start talking about now differentiating what it is that we are working towards, I, for one, would be very keen, as we were saying during the break, would be very keen to see us stopping the criminalization of a user. Because now you're dealing at another level of now working on the laws. Why would you want to criminalize a person who probably even has a problem? We are being told that, as research is saying, that if a youth started using cannabis from the age of around 7 to 13 and all the way to 30, while their brains is still forming, they are probably going to fall into some mental problems. So it means that a guy who's using this thing in uni, who is either dependent or even addicted, is already a case for daktari, is already is a patient. So if
Before
we
it actually starts to work.
yes, before he even starts to work,
Adulting properly.
but there's even research showing that even the effects of it go to his social life and to even how he will ever be able to earn in his life, to even the extent of reducing his IQ for starting to smoke early. So now this is a patient. They're not to be caught, and I'm the one going to find out what the issue is at Reruta police station or Takabete police station, because you criminalized use. But now, when you talk about control, you might be able to control it at an earlier stage so that a younger person is not able to get hold of this until a date where they are able to have the right faculties to make the decision.
Okay,
because some of the reasons that are getting them to use
Yes.
are peer pressure. And suffice it to say that any person who's been to, a Kawaida high school has probably tried out weed. So who do we know is going to get addicted? Because we are saying it's random sampling.
But
someone will try it one day, get addicted immediately. There's someone who will try it and get the effects of maybe they were predisposed to schizophrenia or psychosis, and they end up. But even short-term use, there's someone who will use weed and get high. There's someone who will use weed once and start hallucinating immediately. There's someone who will choma and get into an anxiety attack. So you see now, that's not a decision we want to leave to our children.
And you'll find, like, I think just based on research, Colorado was the first state in the US that legalized, I believe it was 2013 September. And you can find that it was, for you to access weed, you had to be 21 and over. But young people, it was actually like find out later on that by 50%, like compared with the average of the United States, young people actually started getting addicted because now they had normalized it. Now the way they could access cigarettes before or just liquor, right now even now weed was normalized. And so you can find, like, based on research, just before we jump into the bandwagon as Kenyans, because it's a developed thing to do, let's get to research.
But they also said that, some of these reports also indicated that, with legalization, then it reduces because it stops being that attractive,
Yeah, that's the point.
thing.
I mean,
Yes, we-
yeah. You see, again, here we keep talking about weed or cannabis as if it's one thing. The ingredients, whether we're talking about legalizing, and this is
The
why
actual
I
plant.
keep going back to what are we talking about? What? Because in the weed, let's just go with the THC. That's the psychoactive thing
Yes.
which acts on your brain, gets you high, or like CBD, which is then when we're moving towards extracting that for medical purposes. So first thing going back, let's talk about the prevention. Because this thing of telling kids, don't use weed. Why? It's bad. Why? Because I'm your father and I've said, if you use it, no. Kids are going to ask why. And if you don't answer that why, they're going to go somewhere else. So our starting point, what programs do we have for prevention? Where you're not coming with a stick way, but you are explaining. A kid asks you a question and you answer that question honestly. The reason, biologically, your brain is not developed till around 24. And if you start using cannabis or other drugs, this is what is likely to happen. Already, you'll get some people not going in that direction. Then you have the ones who will still proceed and whatever. So you'll have the ones with psychosis, they'll go Dactari's way. You will have the ones who get addicted, approximately 1 in 4 will come. For example, I'm co-founder of Willing Way Recovery Center. When you are dealing with addiction, criminalizing, if I was being sent to jail instead of taken to help. So judges, etc., when it now comes to policy, magistrates should have leeway to add, in a case where you are a user, you're given option jail or rehab and so on.
And actually, we are seeing many magistrates sending people for treatment rather than to the jail.
But you see, that's
If you go
because
to
of
Madari
the-
Hospital, you will see
Yes.
many people
Yes.
who are there for treatment because they are using cannabis. But again, we also need to allow research to be done so that when we say there is medicinal value, it is backed with research.
May I just jump in? May I just jump in?
1 minute, 1 minute.
Just 1 minute.
John, very briefly. Yes.
Sure. There's a lot of research, there's a lot of reports, there's a lot of facts out there in regards to the medicinal benefits of cannabis.
Yes.
You do not have to reinvent the wheel. You need to just take up the research that has already been done. Do clinical trials. Harness the beneficial uses of cannabis. Have a regulatory environment so that you protect the young people from consuming cannabis, while at the same time you harness the benefits of the plant as it is.
Now, which is
I think what
I think
I mean, I got prosecuted my point. Not just
take the
one-
conversation forward. I think what we can do as a country, and this would be a proposal that I think would be agreeable, is unpack cannabis into its uses.
Yes.
If we're saying there's something that is useful in cannabis, let's say that one, it makes people high, and say that is a use. Say secondly, it can be used for medicinal purposes.
Sustainable
Is the,
fashion or-
then we
there's so
say
many industrial
that there's the industrial part.
Yes.
Now, if we identify these uses, then we can now draw a roadmap.
Yeah.
For example, if we are making laws
Yeah.
that are about control of marijuana, we might even be able to start out with industrial use, for example, where, for example, the bill that we were talking about of Honorable Ken Okoth that was seeking to control the growth of the, just the same way, there's some, like in the colonial time, there were laws governing how you grow coffee, for example. Like our parents could not uproot coffee, they could not cut coffee. So if it's for industrial use, and as a country, we agreed that it is for industrial use, we can take that step.
Yes, we can.
If it is agreed that there's some medicinal value, there can be research going into that and getting it done.
But the research has been done, which is what,
No.
John.
If you go into any research on cannabis, because of what you were talking about, you will find that there is so many gaps there, and Dr. will tell you, very many gaps. That's yes.
Some are opinion based.
And even the fact that there has been so many restrictions into research, so much so that so much of what is out there says is inconclusive. For example, when you go into research of a drug, you want to know the difference between the correlation and the causation.
Yes.
Now, how are we able to say that someone got mad because they smoked bang, or whether they were predisposed to smoke bang?
Just to know that when KJ says that the research is inconclusive and there's been inconsistencies, does that mean that the World Health Organization is wrong to say that CBD has been approved as having medicinal value?
It's not. It hasn't been conclusive.
It's all out there.
Yes, Catherine.
We are discussing
This is the World Health Organization
cannabis.
that you're talking about.
Yes, cannabinoid CBD is part of it, and what is in the market as both THC and CBD.
Yes.
But
And that's
you are
where regulation
selecting-
comes in. That's where regulation comes in.
And I like his point when he says, why do people find the need to smoke in the first place? What need are they feeling? Are they anxious? Are they dealing with stress?
It's because
and
of
we need to address that. Are they idle? Is it peer pressure they can't beat? Do they have the wrong information?
Which is not a
We
problem
need to
of
give that
cannabis.
to
Which is not a
prevent
problem of
the need.
cannabis. It's a problem of the individual.
Now-
It's a problem of the society, but it's not a problem of cannabis as a plant.
Again, the point I'm trying to prosecute. When we are saying we don't reinvent the wheel, Dr. is saying that THC and the CBDs are there. For medicinal, let me use the example of the US. They have bred down the THC and bred up the CBD. They are even patenting CBD for use of certain medicines, like for epilepsy, etc. Don't forget, our Kiondo was patented by others. We can't even use our own thing. So must we always wait? Must we always wait instead of jumping in now and seeing what medical side, leave industrial, let's leave recreation. On the medical side, what can we get from these medicines so that we also patent these and export them? Must we always
So
be
surprisingly, I mean,
inventors?
now that he has brought that issue, the issue of patents, it's a very controversial issue in the sense that when you say that they are patenting medicines that have CBD, you'll be surprised that most of the original cultivars or land springs come from Africa.
Yes.
The most
Yeah, I
potent,
know that.
the most
I know
effective.
that.
But simply because
Yes.
we are slow to adopt the research that has already been there and to move it a step further, we'll end up probably being dependent again on the
Exactly.
West because of the patents that
Exactly.
But again, when we are doing research, medical research, you come up with a proposal, subject it, present it to the ethics committee to check whether your research is going to do harm or it's going to help.
True.
So you follow certain stages. So I don't think today, if I did a proposal which makes sense and presented to the ethics committee to check whether my research will be done without harming the community further, I'll be stopped. So there's nothing stopping Ogot, stopping me, stopping any of us here
He's
to
right.
do the
you cannot do that unless there's a regulation in place. There must be a regulation.
Cannabis is illegal.
What I'll say, all this is beautiful, but we are thinking too much about globalization. I think as Kenyans also we've got our own values and we need to go back, like as a country, the values represent. Is this something, of course, weed has got benefits and disadvantages, but is it something, looking at disadvantages which outweigh the benefits, is it something we want to really embrace as a society wholesomely? Yes, there are
I
economical
definitely
benefits,
disagree that
but
the disadvantages
why
outweigh the
lose the
benefits.
soul of a country just to gain the world, just to gain economical? You know what I'm saying? I truly believe there are other products, other things also in the country which can actually like lift us up economically, which are less controversial. Yes, for weed, the CBD part, which is actually the medicinal part, then if that can be the focus of research, let that be the focus, but not just wholesomely.
I mean,
Okay,
I
but
mean,
you see, Jeffro and David looks like he wants to get a point of
there's madness going on. Because you see, when we are talking about the losing our moral whatever,
and our values.
tobacco kills more people than all drugs, legal,
It's
illegal,
legalized.
prescription,
It's legal.
HIV related, road crashes, TB combined. And it's illegal, and nobody's talking about
Nobody has ever died of cannabis,
whatever.
excessive
Nobody has.
cannabis use.
Or even
Weed.
cannabis
Okay,
overdose.
Jeffro and David, 1 minute. Dr. Catherine, I know you want to add on something, but you see, we're all circling around the economic, value, and it's one for the books. We see this in all of the countries, and even medicinal.
I'm talking about medicinal. medicinal
Yes.
aspect.
Medicinal.
The immense benefits that as a
Your
country.
microphone, John.
Sorry for that. I think that the
I
debate
want
got
to direct
heated.
this question to KJ specifically because, we keep going back to it and we keep talking about the money that, we could make. And the legalization brings, money, there's no doubt about it. We've seen this, from all of the states that have done it, even Canada, which is what
Nipsey.
he's touching on. He doesn't understand how, you're making billions and we're here and we could do this as well. When we look at things like that, when we hear about coffee, the poor yields and the low returns, could we, if we legalized marijuana and controlled its use, we could make money out of it, true or false?
The thing is, Amina, legalize marijuana. We said we have to unpack
But
it
not
into
on
different.
ground, though, not
Yes,
on
we
ground.
have to. When you have a marijuana conversation,
Yeah.
be ready to have a conversation that is political. Be ready to have an economic discussion.
So
Be ready to have a moral conversation. Be even ready to have a cultural and a medical conversation. It's such a wide conversation. Now, if you start now zeroing in, for example, and go into medicinal, you will see that there are benefits to be gotten out of it. Now, you can draw a road path to that. If you go to the economic part of it, and remember, you're talking about a plant that has been used industrially for millennia.
Yeah.
Ways back, there are people who are using hemp. But now when you say that we will be growing hemp, there's someone who wanafikiria amesema sasa kuleni bangi. And when you go now into the science of it and see what hemp is as compared to cannabis, these are worlds apart. In my language, there is even a plant called movagi, which grows widely. You'll find it. It's actually even it's a weed, not weed. It's a weed. It's in the plant, and there are people who have gone into that thing and found uses for it. I was saying to Daktari that even when I was younger, for Science Congress, I'd gone and gotten this plant, crushed it, mixed it with cow dung, and made mosquito coil out of it. It could be having cannabinoids in it for it to be called vagi, but you can't smoke it. But then it's a worlds apart from cannabis sativa. So my point is this: when you have a weed conversation, it will not be one big conversation. It'll have to be broken down into a series of conversations. But it's a good place to start to have this conversation. And I will go back again to what is it that are the low-hanging fruits for us. I think for me, I will still say it again. There's an opportunity for us, as we are having this conversation, to start with decriminalizing the use of cannabis and Jesus.
How many, do you have the stats of how many young people are, just rotting away?
We talked about research.
Yes.
For example, if you go into the books, you might find it very hard to find research that is local. But when you look at the US, for example, they're saying that if they interviewed anyone and sampled, 51% of people will say they have tried it out. It becomes lower when you go to the people who are dependent, goes lower to the people who are addicted, because that's what the research was looking out to do. But I can tell you, there is very high use of cannabis in our country. If you go to any university today or any technical institution in Kenya,
Primary school, it's there.
But we are only speculating, because that's a speculation to say that maybe the cause of wide use is prohibition, and maybe say that we could only be speculating because we don't have any.
Nakada has figures, but even without quoting those figures, we are talking about legalizing. My question would be, is weed illegal in Kenya anyway? If I send you to get heroin now, you'd have a problem, or cocaine, etc. But if I sent you for alcohol, cigarettes, or weed, you'd be back in 2 minutes. So really, is it illegal? It's there. It's all over. Cops take tax on it, and they know shisha is still being smoked, though despite being made illegal. We've just shifted Mira from being a drug, so we spent like 15 years telling kids it's a drug. Now we have to tell them it's a cash crop.
It is illegal, it is prohibited, and it is criminalized.
So
which are three different things.
Changa is legal, but the structures have not been put in place. So if you are still found manufacturing or consuming, you're still going to be arrested. Who is arrested? I was drinking Changa in CBD in the 70s and 80s. Changa is still being drunk in the CBD, right where we are forget huko ndani ndani, and it is illegal. Hapa tu nje. So my question is it illegal in the first place? As on the house bolted.
Illegal in both.
Yeah, legal in both. Yeah, legal in both.
Many people ask the same debate of why not legalize cannabis, yet you have legalized alcohol and it has causes more death, cigarettes cause more death. I would like people to analyze each of those substances. They are all mood-altering substances, and they are of their own effects. If today we were discussing tobacco, we will be discussing all the problems of tobacco and convince young people why they should not start smoking. When we talk of alcohol, it has its own problems. When we talk of injectable drugs, it has its own problems. So let's not confuse young people that legalize cannabis because alcohol and tobacco kill more people than cannabis. So all of them are mood altering and they have their own problems. But again, I will emphasize, let's find out, can we help our young people have good mental health so that they don't need to fill a gap in themselves? And can they beat peer pressure so that they don't need that? And can they know that you can't do a test now to tell, if I smoked cannabis, I'll be affected. If I smoked cannabis, I can't be affected.
Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, alcohol does not have medicinal benefits. Cigarettes doesn't have medicinal benefits. Cannabis has been proved to have medicinal benefits.
Timothy was a doctor in the Bible says alcohol has medicinal benefits.
It does have. But I'll finish like this.
Probably
For everyone of faith who's watching this, everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. So that's my last words.
All right, David, your final comment?
What I was saying, like Carrie is not saying we legalize. I am asking, look at what is legal, what is illegal, etc. So where is the logic? We are shifting Mira to a cash crop. So this argument, this debate needs to go back. We remove emotions because so far young people will look and they are always asking in school, why is tobacco legal? If you say, as I'm always saying, tobacco is the only product which, if used as per manufacturer's instructions, should kill you. So they ask them, why does the government? And these are the same young people we're asking, these are the same people listening to this debate and wondering, where is the logic of the lawmakers when, for example, tobacco is legal? There are certain things, as you're saying, medical value, which has been shown only from cannabis can help. Especially a lot of it, medicinal is used for pain, pain-related issues. They've tried everything else. They're getting addicted to other things, but from marijuana-based, they've been able to. So we need to go back to the drawing board because our arguments are a bit illogical.
But again, many young people use cannabis for recreation. They're not using it because they're treating pain.
True.
So they're using it for recreation.
I am talking about...
You cure that by having regulations in place.
What are we legalizing? Going back to what I've been asking.
My final words.
What are we talking about legalizing?
My final words. First of all, my journey with cannabis is very personal. And I'm talking about, you're talking about firsthand, but also observing people who are loved ones walking the cannabis journey. And some of who ended up in the zone that Dr. is talking about, the zone of schizophrenia, falling into depression, manic depression, psychosis and schizophrenia, and so on and so forth. But what I'm saying is because now we have the opportunity, because of the hype around legalized marijuana, I think it is good to now say to the country that there is an opportunity, as I said earlier, to have a conversation on decriminalizing it. But even as we're talking about decriminalizing marijuana, let's also not make it too flowery. We also need to remind the population that marijuana itself is an entry drug. That there are people who started out smoking marijuana and ended up in the situation of the young people that we're trying to help in the Goreti South constituency, who are now into the injectables, who are now sniffing stuff, by starting out trying it out. Because we have been told that the moment you start smoking marijuana, especially at the point when your mind is forming, the risks are so high that even having this discussion as a sensational issue would be doing a lot of harm to our community. So for me, I think we need to check all these discussions, not as one discussion of legalized weed, But going to the political angle of it, the moral angle of it, the medical angle of it, the industrial and economic angle of it, that would be a good place where we have started by having the conversation.
One last word. I think it is very, very short. It's high time that this country should think about legalizing medicinal cannabis. I think the church would also agree with me that there's an element of compassion in the sense of people who are suffering from disease and all kinds of ailments. So I don't think that should be an issue at all.
Yes.
There's a lot of research. There's a lot of facts.
That's actually a very good question, the percentage between medicinal and recreational use. Even though my director told me to cut 20,000 times annual. Last question.
Yes.
The percentage.
Well, what would be the
Between the
As currently as you're speaking, how many
How
Kenyans
more
are
people-
using it?
medicinal, and this is even when they're, when they go outside.
for me,
Medicinal, we don't have.
No, not
For me, I will not even think about an issue of how many less people are suffering for me to deny the medicine. As long as this medicine works, I would, even if it's one person, I would. That's the compassionate way.
There's no argument
You know, the Narcotics and the
Okay,
Narcotics Drugs
we-
Act
We have not
are
So
now
we do
extracted.
this again next week,
Yes,
same time,
yes,
Thursday?
yes.
Okay,
Exactly.
all right, no problem. But no,
Already
these
tomorrow,
are those are very traditional. We don't want it to look like we're telling them, oh, it's so much better than cigarettes. So now someone who's watching is like, so alisema pombe ni mbaya kushinda hii. Listen, the effects are real. The effects are real. Short-term memory loss. We're talking impaired motor skills. We're talking you feeling paranoia, you getting anxiety. We're talking about you getting addicted. When you get addicted, it affects your productivity. When you're 21 and you're smoking all day, you don't have to think about your future, what it is that you want to do, what is your ambition, your drive. You're just like, hey, manze, kama nishika yo. And that's all you're thinking about. We're going to continue this
And
conversation.
import.
We're going to continue this conversation. Thank you so
Add
much for your time.
testicular issues to it also.
For the men,
Important.
testicular issues.
Uko na charger.
That we should talk about. No, great. Thank you so much.
No, it's
You
there.
kind of clearly was
THC
fine. I'm going to throw it off.
is-
Generally, on the other
Yeah,
side.
yeah, yeah. THC